All right, let's do something a little different. We're not just going to talk about some historical organization. No, we're going to put you right inside of it. So forget the history books. For the next few minutes, this is your life. You're the recruit, you're the operative, and yeah, eventually, you're the commander in the KGB's most secret and lethal division. This is your story.
Picture this. You're standing in a forest clearing just outside Moscow. It's November and it is brutally cold. You and 41 other men are standing in perfect silence, watching your breath hang in the air like a ghost. You're wearing a uniform you don't really understand yet, with these cornflower blue shoulder boards stamped with 2 letters, GB, State Security. All you're doing is waiting.
An instructor in a long gray coat stops right in front of you, and he isn't just looking at you. It feels like he's looking straight through you. He asks you this question. Now, it sounds philosophical, right? But it's not. It's diagnostic. It's a test. And you say yes. Of course you say yes, because you were taught to say yes to things like this before you even knew how to tie your own shoes. He just nods and moves on. And just like that, you've sealed your fate.
You have no idea yet, but you've been chosen. And not for some regular intelligence job, but for a unit so secret it doesn't even officially exist for very long. A division that literally changes its name every decade just to erase its own bloody history. You are about to become a living weapon for the state.
So, this is where it all begins. You are now part of this clandestine lineage, a kind of ghost organization inside the massive 500,000-strong KGB. Fewer than 200 people in the entire Soviet Union even have a clue what this unit's real purpose is.
Look at this history. It's a story of constant erasure. Each name you see here represents a chapter of operations so extreme, so dirty, that the Politburo would periodically declare the unit dissolved only to quietly rebuild it under a new name. It's the ultimate form of plausible deniability, baked right into the organizational chart.
Okay, so you passed the psychological test. Now your real education starts. You're sent to a school that doesn't appear on any map, it receives no mail. This is where they're going to unmake you and then remake you into something else entirely. So, your first lesson isn't marksmanship, it's invisibility. The art is called konspiratsia. A huge part of this is something they call dry cleaning, which is just a cool term for surveillance detection. You walk the streets of Moscow for hours, and your only job is to spot the elite team from the 7th Directorate that's tailing you, and then to lose them without ever letting them know you saw them. You fail the first 11 times, but on your 12th attempt, you finally do it, using this insanely complex route through the Moscow metro that took 9 hours to plan and just 42 minutes to execute. After you master being a ghost, your training shifts. It gets darker. You're transferred to a facility you are never allowed to name, in a forest you're never allowed to photograph. This is where you learn what your division really does. Mokroye delo, wet work. And the guys teaching you this stuff? They're not academics. They are legends. The actual men who carried out the very assassinations that are now your case studies.
And these are the specialized tools you'll be using. I mean, these are not battlefield weapons. They are instruments designed for forensic cleanliness, all developed in the infamous Laboratory 1. You train with a cyanide spray gun that can make a death look like a heart attack. You handle a cigarette case that fires a single shot at point-blank range. You learn that every target requires a different tool, a different method, a different level of deniability. You're learning to kill like a locksmith, not like a soldier.
Now, years into your training, if you are truly the best of the best, you might be selected for the ultimate assignment. And this isn't just a mission, it's a total transformation of your entire being. You're chosen for Directorate S, the most revered and secret part of the KGB. You are going to become an illegal. For years, you live in a safe house where specialists painstakingly erase every single trace of your Russian identity. They rebuild your accent, syllable by syllable. They teach you the history of a town you've never seen, and they drill you on the names of teachers you never had. You learn to gesture like a Frenchman, or complain about the weather like an Englishman. Your entire past is replaced with this meticulously crafted fiction, a legend, so perfect it could withstand any investigation.
And then you're deployed. You enter a Western country, maybe you get married, have a family, and you create this profound split in your own existence. Your children will grow up knowing you only as, say, a Canadian engineer or a Belgian academic. They will have absolutely no idea their father doesn't actually exist. You're helping them with their homework, smiling at the dinner table, all while carrying the weight of being, as the source material puts it, the loneliest human being on the continent.
After nearly a decade undercover, you come back to Moscow. And the reintegration is brutal. You have to unbecome the person you spent all those years perfecting. But you're rewarded for your service. You're moved into management. Now, you no longer walk the streets. You move the pieces on the board.
This principle is the entire architecture of your division, and now you're a part of it. As a controller, you're the firewall. You prepare the technical packages, you authorize the missions, you make sure the operatives in the field have exactly what they need. But you are completely insulated from the act itself, which ensures that absolute deniability for the state. As you rise through the ranks, you get access to a whole different world inside the Soviet Union, the Berezka stores. And listen, these aren't just shops. They are a critical mechanism of control. In a country of empty shelves and endless lines, these stores were islands of Western abundance, and they were accessible only to the absolute elite. This is basically capitalism behind a birch tree. And these privileges, the Japanese stereo, the French perfume, the bigger apartment, they're given to you very deliberately. They're creating a gilded cage for you. You now have a life that is significantly better than all of your neighbors. You have something to lose, and a man with something to lose does not defect.
So you've made it. You've reached the highest echelons. You command a directorate. You brief the Politburo. You are at the absolute center of Soviet power. And from this vantage point, you can see the truth. The empire is rotting from the inside out. And here is the great irony. The higher you climb, the more you are watched. The system surveils its own leadership with the same intensity it watches its enemies. It's called prophylactica. You get a polite, preventative warning from an internal security officer, and it's a stark reminder that power doesn't protect you from suspicion. In fact, it amplifies it. You have access to all the intelligence. Your own officers are writing reports describing Western economies that are so abundant the Soviet system looks medieval in comparison. You know the state is failing, but you can't say it. Your job is no longer to deliver the truth. It's to deliver the comfortable fictions that the leadership wants to hear, because if you don't, you'll be removed. And then, in 1991, the collapse finally comes. The KGB is formally dismantled. But dismantled is just a word. The organization was just broken up and rebranded. The first chief directorate, it became the SVR. Domestic security, that became the FSB. The files weren't destroyed, they were just transferred. The personnel weren't retired, they were just reassigned.
So that raises the key question, right? When an organization like this is dismantled, what really happens to 5 decades of refined tradecraft? The networks? The weapon caches they buried all across Europe? The answer is nothing. It's all inherited.
And that really is the most chilling part. Somewhere in Moscow, right now, a student is being noticed by a professor, not for brilliance, but for a natural comfort with deception. A name gets passed along a channel that has never stopped working. A quiet conversation will be had, and a question will be asked about the right of the state to eliminate an individual for the good of the collective.
The names change, the flags change, but the work continues. The darkest vision always gets a new name. Because as the source material concludes, while the symbols of power are altered, the mission remains exactly the same.